Good morning, you guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Renaissance Room podcast. Spring is here. It is a new beginning. I am feeling so incredibly grateful for this new beginning. I have definitely had a few experiences in my life where, there's just been a season of transition, simply put. I was going to say seasons, but honestly, I just got excited and I really lost my train of thought. That's not what I meant to say. What I was going to say was how, you come into a new season and you think you're going to be with certain people who maybe, guided you in a previous season or, and so forth. And you're not, right? Like the relationships aren't rekindled. It's not reconcilable. I will say something that I think I was really sitting with, and I was like, man, why is it that it's always kind of appearing as though whenever you're growing and whenever you're learning and your life is getting better, essentially, right? Because honestly, I think as you get older, your life should honestly get better. I really do believe that. I know we talk about having struggles and things like that. And when we talk about struggles, I mean, you're talking about just the difficulty that is life. But I think when you start talking about, your life getting better as you get older, you shouldn't have certain struggles, right? Like I think in your 20s, you're struggling with identity, you're struggling with stability, you're struggling with security, right? Within self as well as external security, right? Financial security, things like that. I do believe that as you get older, I think to live a life well lived, to live a life of great responsibility, to live a life of purpose, I do think that your life should get better. And the Bible promises us that, right? Like God tells us that your latter days will be greater than your former days. So that's how I operate. That's kind of why I kind of have my own little, opinions, give or take. I'm still pretty young, but I do have my opinions about, what we should, I have my opinions about developmental markers, right? Now, I'm not getting into things like ableism, disabilities, things like that, right? Like, let's not even bring that into the conversation because quite frankly, I think when we try to be so inclusive and address certain things as such, I think it actually comes off as pretty insensitive, right? So I think in all of our attempts to be inclusive and to have certain type of conversations, I think we should be mindful of the language, right? So in this example, I'm saying, hey, we should have certain developmental markers. You shouldn't refute that or try to rebuttal with an argument that, hey, look, there are people who have disabilities who can't meet these markers, right? Because I think that is just insensitive. And I think that is common knowledge, right? We know that. And so that's not what I'm referring to. But I do think that, I think there are certain developmental markers that I think we should be reaching as we get older. And I think by removing that and creating a normalization of passivity, a normalization of, I'll just say passivity for now. I do think that sets a lot of people up to not really build upon those layers that would make for a stronger sense of self-identity and a greater life satisfaction, right? I was even thinking about this as I was engaging on TikTok. I said to myself, man, I think I'm actually getting too old for TikTok. Now, of course, saying that sounded a bit superior and I had to check myself, right? Like, let's relax, right? But when I say that, I was thinking like, man, I feel like I'm getting older, and this app is full of like a bunch of young kids who, just are online creating chaos behind these fake pages and all this other stuff. Like, I just feel like for myself, it's like, man, I really engage in life in such a real way. And then I also kind of had my indifferences about TikTok and social media because of how I grew up. I say this all the time, right? I grew up sort of like Gen Z, but mostly like millennial. So we had things like Meez, which was Meez. It was like this online avatar thing where you could come in these chat rooms and you know what I mean? Like I kind of grew up in the chat room era, the rise of Instagram, the booming of editing, and where you really had to have technological skills outside of certifications, right? So for example, Tumblr was a thing. I was on Tumblr and I used to code. I didn't even know I was coding. I was coding, editing this web page, you know what I mean? And that was really cool. And there was really no big thing about it. Like I was a 12-year-old coding, you know what I mean? I think that is so cool looking back hindsight. And so for me, I grew up with like the picnic era, which is PICNIK, where you would go and you would just literally create these images, you would design and edit your images, but it would be so extra, but it was so highly creative and so vibrant. And so I come from the internet era, right, where we engage with the media in a way that is, I don't want to say passive, but it's, 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 I want to say adjacent to our real lives, right? So it's completely opposite. Like, you're not putting all your business online. You're not, you know what I mean? Like that, you're engaging with the media in such a fun way, in a non kind of like serious way, and you're having fun with it. You're not trying to brand. You're not trying to sell anything. Like, I think that the commercialization and the capitalism kind of infiltrating in creative spaces created this monster, and so when I'm online, I'm like, ooh, I don't really like the people that I'm engaging with on TikTok. You know what I mean? I get some of the most nastiest comments. I'm like, I need to go back to YouTube. I need to just stay right where I'm at. You know what I mean? Because I realize that this is not something that I like. Now, if you guys have been following me for a few years now, I've struggled with a little bit of anxiety. I've struggled with, not really wanting to be known in that sense, kind of enjoying this level of authenticity that I'm able to have, because I think it is so fulfilling, right? When you don't have a large platform, right? And it's kind of like you can act in that to fame. When you don't have that, you're able to engage with the media in such a way that is so authentic and so true to who you are. And so coming from that type of background, right? That cultural background with my relationship with the internet, it's hard to kind of like transition, right? Like, I feel like, I'm just used to being able to come online, do what you want, say what you want, have a little fun, and leave it there, right? I'm used to engaging in the real world, right? You had your friends, you had Instagram, but it wasn't that big of a deal. You know what I mean? Like, you had people who engaged with one another in real life, and that's kind of still how I operate. And I remember, like maybe 2024, I was like, man, I feel like I need like a software update. Like, I feel like I was getting older, transitioning past the age of 25, because there's definitely a shift. And I was like, man, like, I just feel like I'm different, from my peers. It's like I look young, and I'm kind of talking to these young people, and I am young, right? Like, I am young, but it's like there's a disconnect, there's a disconnect. And so huge difference there. But anyway, I wanted to come on here today, and I wanted to talk about Black women's pursuit of desirability and the search for beauty, right? So if you go online, you can see, even in your real life, right, that there's a bunch of stuff that encourages Black women in their beauty and in just, it's very uplifting, right? We've created a community for one another that is so uplifting, that really encourages Black women in all types of shapes and forms and sizes and aesthetics. And it's incredibly empowering, right? But at the same time, right, simultaneously, there is a pursuit of desirability, right? So I was talking about Black women in economics, right? And their dating and partner relationships. And it's so funny, you guys. I come on YouTube, I come on my podcast. Like, when I get off TikTok and I come and engage with you guys with certain ideas, I'm like, this is so silly. You know what I mean? Because it's like, it's not real, And it's like, I feel the need to kind of break it down and deconstruct it a little bit, because I just feel like it's become this ideology that is so prevalent, and they're like, this is real, this is the real world, like, this is how, and I feel so sorry for younger generations of people, because not only are they gonna be very inept of like self-esteem and the things that would make for them to be like a healthy individual, but it's like, you don't even know what's real and what's fake, and instead of getting out in the world and like having your experiences and learning and growing, it's like you're being forced to become something before you even know who you are, and I think that that's the thing that is so incredibly dangerous about like social media. And I don't want to use the word dangerous, because I just think it's not that serious, but it is sort of when you start talking about like persons and their self-esteem. And so I was talking about, just the feminine content, right? The feminine content that encourages women to use men for their money, et cetera, et cetera. Now, let's just keep it real. This is nothing new. This is not an ideology that is like, new, right? And of course you could say, well, there are no new ideas, right? Like, we're all just recycling ideas and engaging with them in a different way. And it's like, okay, yeah, sure, let's be stoic about it. But at the same time, right, the prevalence of this, it's like, you would think it's something new, but it's not. There's always been women who have been this way, who behave this way, and had this kind of, attitude about men long before feminine content creators. And so it's nothing new, right? It's nothing new. So anyway, seeing that a lot of Black women are seeking to fit into the space of desirability, right? We know that Black women are not the ones for the picking when you start talking about high earning and so forth. And even still, you guys, me engaging with this idea here in this space, it feels like a lie. Like, I know that's not true. There are athletes and rappers who have black wives. There are high earning corporate CEOs who have black wives. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like, honestly, I'm making this podcast and I feel like we can't even come from that angle, because I feel like I would just be saying something I don't actually believe. You know what I mean? Like, we know that's just not the case. And so this is why I think it's important to go, as they say, go outside and touch some grass, engage with the real world, because much of what we see online is just not real. Of course, as a black woman, they would categorize me aesthetically as like the plain Jane, the black nerd, because you're everything that is not like stereotypically black women, right? Which is hypersexuality. You don't agree with that? No? Okay. And so, for me, let me just say this, my search for beauty was tough. I eventually end up disengaging from the idea, and I was so liberated from it because I did feel as though I didn't fit into those things, right? I was slim. I was bullied for that. I felt like my high school and collegiate experiences were very, I would say few and far between. And I think that that's something that's pretty common within a lot of educated black women. And yes, it could be standards, right? Standards definitely play a huge role. I think that's also why I don't want to speak so matter-of-factly about things. Standards play a huge role. But I also just think that finding suitable, I don't want to say suitable, but finding partners that you're compatible with, so essentially what I'm saying, and let me get to the point, is you're left alone. You're left alone when you're not phenotypically and aesthetically desired and falling into those lines as black women. But I want to tell this story not from someone who feels sullen about this, not for someone who is struggling with this. I want to tell this story from a place of victor and not victim. You know what I mean? Because here's the truth, right? Obviously, you're not going to fit everybody's cup of tea, but you're going to be somebody's cup of tea, And I just think that, okay, maybe we can switch this to say beauty is definitely within. We can switch this to say, I think beauty is authenticity, because beauty is more so like the state of just being versus being gorgeous or whatever, which I think is so performative, and it's subjective, and it's relative, it's very vast. It's a spectrum, right? It's a spectrum. And I think beauty is man, you could see a tree with a carving and, and it's oh, this thing is so beautiful. And I'm referencing a tree because I'm outside. But it's my point is you can find beauty in some of the most burrowed and unconventional spaces. Bless you. And so, yeah, I just think that that's how I've learned to kind of engage with that. And I would say that the pursuit of beauty is just more so recognizing that you really are beautiful just the way you are. And I do think you have to absolutely detach from the universal standard of beauty, because you'll never really fall in line with that, especially if you are someone who's a black woman and you don't fit into certain type of aesthetics and a certain type of phenotype, and you're not hypersexual, and I don't even want to say phenotype, we'll go ahead and just say stereotypes about black women and beauty. If you're not loud, if you're not, you know what I mean? If you have, you know what I mean? So yeah, there you have it, kids. There you have it, kids. Much of what you see online just isn't real. And I know this podcast kind of just took a complete left turn. But I just realized I'm sitting out here in nature and I'm just minding my business, enjoying my coffee. And I'm chilling, and I'm I just feel like I don't even feel the need to even make a podcast and go down this rabbit hole about black women and beauty, because it's just not true. It's everybody has their own opinions, and contrary to belief and contrary to TikTok, contrary to what your cell phone may look like, in terms of dating options, I believe that black women are beautiful, and I believe that black men find us beautiful, and I believe that when we show up in the world and, we're ourselves, and we're healthy, and we're whole, and we're happy within ourselves, and most importantly, we're living authentically, I think that's where your beauty really shines, And so I think the truth is, it's really getting past all this other riffraff that's the pursuit of beauty. It's getting past all these crazy ideologies, these recycled beliefs, these recycled ideas, these projected, attitudes that, make you feel like you got to be something other than yourself. You know what I mean? It's getting past the idea of being not good enough. It's getting past the idea of being broken. Like, oh, something's wrong with me because I didn't have all of these dating experiences, or oh, something's wrong with me because a guy didn't buy me a Chanel bag from China. You know what I mean? Like it's getting past all of that and being like, man, what is beauty for me? You know what I mean? Like, motherhood specifically has made me appreciate my body so much more, right? Obviously, for the ability to bear life, right? Like, that's pretty significant and it's sickening. But I also think, just in terms of and I can go down the story in the rabbit hole of like how I got to this point, but I'll just say that it's been a long journey of desiring to be chosen and desperation, insecurity, like all these things. And I do think I still have my moments, but I can honestly say it's really when I'm engaging with the media, right? Like in my real life, real world, I'm not having these struggles, right? It's when I'm engaging with the media that it has the biggest impact on my self-esteem. I mean, I can literally feel myself getting drained. I can literally feel myself wanting to disengage because I'm like, man, I just don't feel like I fit in. And I think in part, like I said, that's part of me just getting older. I'm no longer that baddie that was 23. You know what I mean? I'm no longer that. And the crazy thing is, it's like, I was that though, right? Like, and I think that's another thing too, I'll say, we kind of make a lot of these generalizations about Black women based on the youth, right? Based on these young women who categorically can be considered in their prime, right? At 22, 23, when the truth is that we've all had that. We've all experienced that. It's just that it wasn't as popularized by the media. We didn't have TikTok. We didn't have, you know what I mean? We had a different form of media, but we were there. And I think this is also why it's hard for a lot of women who build their livelihood off of this pursuit of beauty to kind of transition as they get older and realize like, hey, look, I'm a mom now. Out of respect for my kid, I'm going to move a little different, right? Like, I'm just going to do it differently. You know what I mean? I have to be, I'm someone's depending on me. Like, I have to be the role model. I can no longer be this hot 20 something that I once was. And do I think there's a moment of grief for that? I do, but I don't think it's anything that's lingering, right? Like, I know we have lingering griefs. Like, if you didn't have that experience, that might be a lingering grief, right? Like, if you didn't have a childhood, that might be a lingering grief. But like, womanhood, it's not a lingering grief because it just is, and it's inevitable. And I think womanhood honestly gets better and sweeter, and you get so much more beautiful as you get older because you get wiser. Right, you know how to take care of your skin. And here's the thing too. Let me just go ahead. You make more money, right? You make more money if you're on your path. You're doing your thing. You make more money. You have more access to different beauty secrets, and I would argue health and nutrition. Like, so it gets better. It gets better. And I think for me, because I'll say this, right? Because I know Tracy Ellis Ross that interview was going around, and she talked about it was, this thing of like being an active participant in your life. When I look at my life personally, I would say that I was an active participant in my life. Like, the things that I've done, the choices that I've made, active participation. You know what I mean? Like, even when I've felt victimized in my relational dynamics, like, I had to recognize, like, you know what? I'm gonna change the narrative, right? Even regardless of what happened, I'm going to change the narrative because this narrative is old. This narrative is boring, and at one point, if I'm being honest, this is exactly what I wanted. You know what I mean? Even though it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to be, this is what I wanted. And so I just think for myself, it's like when you recognize that there's wisdom in making the right decision for yourself, right? At the time that you made it, you can grow from that. If it didn't work out, it's nothing more than just a lesson, and the way I'm talking to you right now, this is how I'm going to talk to my child. You know what I mean? Like, I genuinely I love it. I love mentorship, although I was talking about this as well, just how mentorship is so outdated for a lot of young girls. Like, people aren't really doing that anymore. It's an old model. They don't really like the dynamic of like authoritative figures, you know what I mean, kind of showing up in that way. And though I do think there's a sense of like respect and reverence for older women that I think you can, that I think young girls do have, just generally speaking, I do feel like that is something that is taking place online as well as in the real world, right? Like, as someone who worked in a space of like, wanting to provide mentorship to young women, it's definitely an outdated model, and I think maybe it could look a little bit differently, but what does that look like, right? If you're showing up, you're wanting to be this figure who can provide guidance to these young girls. I don't know what other way to do that than to kind of have that, hey, look, you're the child, I'm the adult type of dynamic. And it's not to say it's a dictatorship, right? Like, we're not here to be parental figures. And I said guardians, but it's more so like, stewardship in a sense. And so I don't know. I think that that's something that, maybe you guys can comment below and kind of share, what does mentorship look like in 2025, because you do have a lot of young kids today, and it's like, hey, they're engaging with their favorite influencers online. Like, they're not looking to to be talked to or at. And it's not a matter of talking down, but it's like, hey, listen, I'm here to share this wisdom with you guys. I'm here to help you guys. And I know that that's kind of where the lines get blurred today, right? Everyone wants to kind of be in the same cohort, right? It's like, hey, we're all friends, be friends with your kids, et cetera, et cetera. And, even when you think about the idea of like gentle parenting, what does that mean? What does it mean to be a gentle parent? Like, let's just look at this in a very simplistic form. Let's not look at it holistically. Like, let's just look at the introduction of the term gentle parenting, right? Like, what is that? Are there some parents who are probably a little bit more harsh? Sure. But I think when we start talking about those parents, we're definitely breaching on the brink here of like abuse and neglect. You know what I mean? Like, they're not really categorized as like good parents. We're not really typically talking about those people, right? Like, we're calling child protective services. You know what I mean? So it's like, when you start talking about like gentle parenting, what does that look like? What is that? Like, I don't know. I think that as parents, we're here to raise our children so that they can survive without us in the world. We're here to raise our children so that they have a healthy self-esteem about themselves, and they can go on and make at least good decisions for themselves. Again, like I said, at the time in which they make them, you know what I mean? To avoid certain peer pressures, to avoid certain, predatory persons. You know what I mean? I mean, Jesus Christ. Like, what are we talking about? And so I don't know. I think gentle parenting kind of became a way for us to be more relaxed in our approach in regards to our responsibilities. And what that did was kind of create this like cataclysmic reaction to where children now are just off the chain. You know what I mean? Like, there is no sense of respect. There is no boundary between what is for adults and what is for children, right? What is for teenagers? What is for young adults? Like, this is why I talk about developmental milestones. And can I just say this too? These are all things I learned in education. Yes, I know you guys are like, what? Yes, that high school education. Those are all things I learned by being amongst my peers. I think what happened, me and my mother was talking about this. Something happened around like 2008 where there became this huge fear mongering in regards to parents, right? And it was like, all these things you're doing wrong. You can't let your kids go outside. There were back-to-back kidnappings on the news, people pulling up in white vans. I mean, all these crazy things that made parents start to shield their children from the world. And so children were no longer engaging with one another. Like, that was pretty much the end of that. That was the end of going outside. That was the end of walking to the store and do, all these different things. And it's not even just in children that it's impacted. It's impacted all of us. I'm even at a point where I'm like, maybe I shouldn't walk to the store. You know what I mean? I used to be a walker. Okay, because that's how I grew up. I mean, me and my cousins would be downtown in the city, back when the city was urban. Okay, the city used to be where the ghetto people used, like, I'm going to say ghetto, let me chill. The city used to be where Black people used to reside, right? We were settlers here, you know what I mean? For migration, Underground Railroad, like that's, yeah, baby, that's what it was. You know what I mean? And so it's like, to kind of fast forward and just see it being so different, it's crazy. But I definitely think a lot of it's been based on fear mongering. Like, I honestly don't think the world is as bad as we make it. And I think sometimes, when you start talking about resistance, you have to kind of resist a lot of the things that you hear today. If you want to live like a good, peaceful life, you know what I mean? And I know we kind of, this isn't, I wouldn't even say that this is a matter of like positivity and just being like OD on the positivity. Like, no, like, there's crazy people out here. But I think just in general, it's like, for example, take, for example, conversations around women and maternal health, right? You start talking about C-sections. Oh my God, more women are getting C-sections. Well, is it that more women are getting C-sections, or is it that, we live in an American society that is predicated on convenience, and we just now are reaching a place where we've got some medical advancements? You know what I mean? Like, perhaps, yes, maybe doctors are just wanting to take your money, and your OBGYN doesn't really care about you and your child, and, maybe she does want to just take your money and get you to go under this more expensive procedure. Or maybe just perhaps we're living in a day and age of modern science. Just maybe. You know what I mean? Like, the incisions are as, your incision isn't as invasive. The procedure is, it's very quick. Like, maybe that's where we are. Maybe God forbid, there be some innovation to rid women of the childbearing, laboring pains, the extensive hours. Like, maybe the world just isn't that bad of a place. You know what I mean? And so that's all I'm getting on here to say. Like I said, I feel for a lot of people who do feel differently about the topics that I kind of addressed today, right? Like there are people that I know I've met in my real life, men who definitely are coming with this Kevin Samuels rhetoric, men who are very misogynistic, men who are very disrespectful. Like I've met that. I've had situations to where I was just simply being, and someone came and tried to like burst my bubble. You know what I mean? Like I've had situations where I've engaged with people and I'm thinking that, okay, this is a professional setting where, everything is cool, and they've actively tried to humble me and tear me down, but I never took it personally. I grew up kind of dealing with that type of dynamic, just being bullied, and just, I would say, you can say that I was born with the gift of discernment, but I would say that I was just a very empathetic child, and I always kind of sensed that it wasn't really about me as much as this person just being threatened by something in me. Maybe they, and it's just jealousy, you know what I mean? Simply put. So I never took it personally, but I can say that I can definitely resonate with these experiences, and I can say that I can certainly identify that when it shows up in our interactions with people who just try to tear you down for just simply breathing. So it's real. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and conclude there. That's the pursuit of beauty. The pursuit of beauty is getting to you, right? It's going through all these different chapters and phases of womanhood, girlhood, and getting to a point where you're like, man, I've arrived on something so beautiful, so strong, and so sturdy. You know what I mean? Like, this is me, and this is how I'm going to show up, and this is what I'm going to be, and this is what, you like it or love it, keep it pushing. You know what I mean? Not like it or love it, but keep it pushing. You know what I mean? And you just kind of start to take a sense of agency over your own life. And I would say that's where the beauty is. You know what I mean? You're no longer kind of just being, like, oh, we're going to just wait and see what happens. No, you're going to actively get out in the world. You're going to do things. You're going to fail. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to have, moments that we would consider to be embarrassing, right? This is the thing about social media, and more specifically TikTok. It's like, oh, this person, had a bad dating experience. It can never be me, et cetera, et cetera. You have all of these young kids who know nothing about life, who don't know that it's definitely getting ready to be them, not because of the things that we speak, and God just happened to be the one who chastises us, but simply because that's just life. You know what I mean? And you do things, you learn, you get better, you don't let it break you, you stay strong, you stay confident in yourself, and you honestly become more confident when you don't fold and you don't allow life to break you. But you'll never have confidence, you'll never find beauty within yourself if you are someone who is so afraid. You don't take chances. You don't do anything. You know what I mean? You just sit online, you comment on other people's lives. Like, get in your life, get in the driver's seat of your life and start actively making decisions. What are we doing tomorrow? Actually, no, because sometimes it takes time to figure out what the next move is. Like, let's not. I'm honestly, when the consistency gym rats came out, I was like, I hate these people. Like, let me not say hate, but I was like, man, I don't like these people. Like, I don't like people who are like every day, 5 a.m., like, no, because it's not like that, right? Like, we got to kind of create a space for humanness. And I think humanness is recognizing that every day does actually look different, and that's okay. And that's a vibe. And that's what it means to be alive. And that leaves room for the serendipitous, that leaves room for spontaneity. But you can also have a routine, of course, but like, you're going to eat every day. You're going to eat, you're going to sleep, you're going to poop. Like, those are things you're going to do every day. And this could be the mom and me talking. But anyway, life happens when we start to take chances and we start to make choices and we start to engage with life in such a real way. You'll never arrive at a place of beauty if you never take chances, if you never have any experiences, if you live your life in such a narrow way. Like, you're never going to get anywhere. You're always going to be the person who's critiquing other people's lives. You're always going to be the person who is deeply insecure within themselves, because that's just your life. You don't have any experiences that have grown you, right? It's kind of like your life resume, right? Like, you go to a job, they're like, hey, where'd you work? What'd you do? It's like when you look back over seasons of your life, hey, where'd you go? What'd you do? You know what I mean? Every season I'm looking forward to growth. I'm saying yes to things, even if I'm not always sure, because I know that by saying yes to this thing, hey, regardless, if this thing goes left, which it might, you know what I mean? There are no guarantees when you start talking about circumstances. hey, at the end of the day, I know that I get to pivot. That's a popular word, right? I get to pivot and I will be able to, figure it out. And that's life. And I look back over my life. I've had so many fun experiences, even the things that you would say are silly. Like, for example, I'll never forget, I met this girl on the plane on the way to New York, and we sat and talked the entire flight. And she came back to my hotel with me. I set my suitcase up and everything, and we went to go grab lunch. I literally and asked her to be the COO of my nonprofit. She told me she worked at all these different places. She had all these different experiences, and she didn't. She didn't. She lied. And I was like, wow, I was really getting ready to sign over my whole little, entrepreneur endeavor to a stranger, And so, my 20s was just vibes. Sometimes you got to just vibe. You make mistakes, you live and you learn. And that's what makes a life so fulfilling. Like that, if we just imagine if it just went left and I had money and, it could have just been terrible. But it's like, that's what makes life more worth living. You know what I mean? Like just doing stuff. Like, and obviously back then I thought it was a good idea. Like clearly fast forward today, I would never do that. You know what I mean? But it's like you live and you learn, and that's the beauty right there. That is your pursuit of beauty. That's the heart of it. That right there is beauty. Peace.